In today's video, we're taking a look at some trade rumors from around the league about the Vancouver Canucks, Toronto Maple Leafs, and Minnesota Wild. We have another signing in St. Louis, some injury updates, and tonight's the night that Phil the Thrill will become the new NHL Iron Man. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at today. First up, as we know, tonight's going to be a pretty impressive special evening for one. Phil the Thrill Kessel, the Vegas Golden Knights, will become the NHL's new Iron Man streak holder at game number 990. So that's obviously last night against the Maple Leafs. He tied the current record holder of Keith Yandle, and now tonight he will move into first place all on his own, and he's got quite a lead and a gap on anybody that's really nowhere close to him at this point. The next closest player for the consecutive game streak for the NHL Ironman leaders is Brent Burns, now the Carolina Hurricanes at 685 games, and Johnny Gaudreau is next after that at 301. So that's certainly a long ways off from 990. I mean, Brent Burns has a good streak there. That's quite a remarkable streak on its own. But given, where he's at in his career, his age, we don't know how much longer Phil's going to keep going and add to that record too, right? Not to say that he's going to be missing time anytime soon. We certainly hope for his sake he doesn't. It would be really cool for him to get, 1,000 or better. That would be quite a remarkable streak. But we'll see. I can't see this record being broken for a really long time, but only time will tell at this point. So it should be a remarkable evening for Phil tonight. We do have a signing in St. Louis. The St. Louis Blues have signed Tyler Pitlick. He was in training camp on a PTO. We've heard for the last number of days that they're likely going to be signing him. They probably had to wait until the timing was right, though, with their cap and roster and all that stuff. So he gets a one-year deal, $750 for the remainder of the current season, so nothing too shocking or spectacular there. 13-year NHL veteran Tyler Ennis has finally signed a contract, but it's not in the NHL. Tyler Ennis has signed on to play in the Swiss League for the remainder of the season as well. I'm not sure if he'll make an effort to try to get back to the NHL or if his time is up. He's been working off of PTOs and short, cheap one-year deals now for quite some time. So hard to say where there was no firm interest to get him signed to an NHL roster this year, if he'll get another opportunity or not. Several other updates of injuries around the league. We got Patrick Laine of Columbus making his return tonight. That surprised a lot of people. I think many thought he might be out a little bit longer, which is great because obviously with the global series coming up, which is obviously he should be a big part of given where they're heading overseas into Finland. So certainly Laine returning is great from that perspective, but great for the Jackets in all aspects, really. So he's back, but they did get bad news on Justin Danforth in Columbus. He's going to be out for a minimum of 6 months, maybe longer, with a torn labrum. It's going to require surgery. So his season is a good chance it's over. Not guaranteed, of course, but doesn't look good in the least. The Philadelphia Flyers are going to be without James Van Riemsdyk for an indefinite period of time. Looks like he has a broken finger or broken bone in his hand. Not quite sure exactly, but definitely a broken bone in his hand of some sort. I believe it's on a finger, though. And he does need surgery. No clear-cut exact timeline, but I'm going to say probably 4 to 6 weeks is a likely, decent timetable for that type of injury that we've seen before. The Seattle Kraken, of course, we know that Philip Grubauer has been hurt, and they called up Joey Daccord a few days ago. He's now officially placed on injured reserve, so no real big surprises there. And the Ottawa Senators, of course, last night had to put backup goaltender Magnus Hellberg in the net and give Anton Forsberg a bit of an unexpected night off. That Forsberg was dealing with some sort of a minor ailment, nothing serious. They called up Kevin Mandolese from Belleville, and Hellberg had a heck of a game. He's put in his first Senators start and got the victory as the Ottawa Senators beat the Dallas Stars, a really good hockey team, 4-1. So certainly great to see Hellberg, and of course, but Forsberg will be back. They've already reassigned Mandolese back down to Belleville, so that all indications are that Forsberg should be back for their next game against Minnesota on Thursday. We did see a couple of other scary incidents last night with some fairly high-profile players. But as of right now, both appear to be okay. I don't know if we'll get any other updates, if they'll have any lingering effects from this or not. But Connor McDavid at Edmonton, we all know how fast he moves on the ice. Scary situation where he slammed into the net in his back, like lower back, hip area type of area, slammed into the goalpost, and he went off pretty gingerly there. And he did come back, and he seemed to be okay, but he did miss some time, but nothing appears to be long-term. I know Coach Jay Woodcroft said earlier today that after obviously finishing the game, seen him at the rink this morning, and he said he seemed to be doing fine, doesn't expect him to miss any time, so that's good news there. And Leafs captain John Tavares as well had a bit of a scary situation where he took a Rasmus Sandin slap shot off of his knee, and it looked like it got him kind of on the outside of the knee where there really wouldn't be much of any padding. He really couldn't even get off the ice on his own, needed assistance. He was down on the ice for some time as well. Eventually, though, he did return to the game, and he seemed to be skating without too much trouble. I know some of those injuries, though, like McDavid and Tavares are dealing with, it can be like, maybe it's just a bad bruise or something. Sometimes you see some lingering effects from it, but right now all indications point to the fact that both players should be good and are not expected to miss any time as of right now. We also seen a Ottawa Senator record broken last night by rookie Shea Pinto. Pinto scored a goal again for the 5th consecutive game, breaking the Sens rookie record for a consecutive goal streak, beating out players like Daniel Alfredson, Alexei Yashin, who had held those records for some time. You have to think with the season that Pinto's having, I know it's early, but he's definitely probably the leading contender, at least as of right now, for the Calder Trophy. But like I said, most players have only got 5 to 7 games in. Lots of hockey to be played. I do believe it's going to be a very crowded group of players that are going to be in that conversation. But Shea Pinto so far has the early jump on goals for the rookie leaders as well. He's got 5. There's a couple of guys that have 2, a bunch with 1, and that's where things stand right now. Of course, his teammate Jake Sanderson playing a solid top 4 role, playing 20-plus minutes a night in a solid defensive effort. Hasn't scored yet, but has some assists, and playing all those minutes was really solid metrics at both ends of the ice. I think he'll be in the conversation too, but hard to say. Like I said in my rookie preview video before the season started, saying about what rookies I thought would be in that conversation for the Calder. I mentioned both of those guys. At the time, though, I wouldn't have thought that either was necessarily going to be right up there and be like, leading the pack this early on, but Pinto's been great. Where Josh Norris of the Senators also got hurt the other night with a shoulder injury, and right now they're saying minimum 2 weeks for Norris, but we probably will know more in the next probably day or so on that shoulder injury. If Norris ends out longer term, longer than expected, if he needs surgery or anything like that, at least Pinto is there to be elevated in the lineup last night to play Derek Brassard in the number 2 spot where Norris normally plays, and that worked out good. He got a goal, the line played well, but Pinto could see a bigger role, which might elevate his his production, his playing time, etc., which could even push him further, to be in the top of the list when it comes to the Calder conversations. Now on to some trade talk from around the league. A couple of teams we want to focus on. One, and do want to talk about Vancouver yet again. Vancouver had another game last night against the Carolina Hurricanes, and we have another loss. So they're now at 7 games with no victories. Of course, they do have a couple of overtime losses, so 2 points in 7 games. They're going to have to run at over 100-point pace for the rest of the way to have a shot at the playoffs. Now, is that reasonable? You wouldn't think, based on how they played in those first 7 games. But after Bruce Boudreau took over last year from Vancouver, they certainly were running at that kind of pace for a big chunk of the year to get themselves into the playoff conversation. Of course, they did end up falling a bit short, but at least they made it interesting. At this point, the games are not even overly interesting, to be completely honest. Vancouver's blue line, to me, is an absolute mess because of the injuries. They're going to be without Quinn Hughes for probably another week. And like I said before, looking at that blue line, it was already not great. It was already thin. You take Hughes out of the question, out of the equation, and it's some serious trouble. They don't have Tucker Pullman. They've had, obviously, Myers has been out for a time. He's back now, but was out for a while. Like, when Tyler Myers and OEL are your top 2 defensemen lugging 24, 25 minutes a night, that's not going to intimidate the teams you're playing against in the least. Like, they're okay defensemen, but they're playing well above where they should be slotted. And it's a complete mess, to be completely honest, in Vancouver. We saw JT Miller with a couple of goals last night, which is good to see. Helps him. They're without Brock Besser up front as well. That's also not good news. But at the end of the day, the Vancouver Canucks, there needs to be change, and I think there will be change soon. Because we talked about yesterday, Elliotte Friedman was already reporting that Jim Rutherford and the management team are exploring, talking to other coaches to see what's out there. If they want to make a coaching change, doesn't mean they're going to, but they need to at least have some conversations to figure that out. And if it gets to the point that they need to, that they'll have somebody maybe lined up. Although they do have a guy like Mike Yeo in the organization as an assistant coach, and well, he could very well take over as an interim, and because he's done that a few times in his career, and certainly well suited for it. So really difficult to say, but in Vancouver, you have to think the two main players that have been mentioned now in the rumor mill, one has been Connor Garland, and we've seen him be a healthy scratch. He seems to be the kind of player that's got a decent contract, and just, I don't know, he seems to be a player that keeps coming up when it comes to who could they trade to get some defensemen, because at this point, the Vancouver Canucks management team, Rutherford and Alvin and ownership need to look at this group and be like, listen, we tried to address the blue line in the offseason. We weren't able to get it done. We were probably a little crazy, in my opinion, for thinking that they could run this D-core back and have the same level of success before, and it's nowhere near good enough. It really is not. At the same time, I understand they're going to have trouble making deals. Bo Horvat, the captain, good player, looks like he wants to be, in Vancouver. I wonder how he's feeling right now, needing a contract extension. They really didn't make it easy to get him re-signed, and you have to think with the way this team is struggling right now, does he even want to re-sign? I do wonder what his feelings are on that situation. We can't say with certainty that he wants out or anything like that, but you would think that at this point, maybe they want to hold off on contract negotiations. I mean, it might be better to wait and get a better idea where the team direction is going, considering that it's not really clear anymore what exactly they need to do. Do they need to consider a rebuild? Do they need to do like a reshuffle, retool? I don't know, but Connor Garland's name and Bo Horvat's name certainly seem to be drawing more attention as the Canucks continue to struggle. And I do think that Jim Rutherford in the past has not been a patient guy. He's been a guy that you have to think everybody feels like he's still calling the shots there in Vancouver. Now, we're either going to see, if not the coach change, that a big trade of some sort's got to be coming. But if they've been trying all offseason to make moves to improve the blue line and it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to be any easier now. There's not a lot of teams that are really off to terrible starts that, would be wanting to already consider making these kind of moves. It's early. Later into the season, as teams kind of, accept their fate, that the playoffs are not happening, they'll consider making some moves for players that may not be part of their long-term plans, but we're not there yet. But I do think either a Horvat or a Garland trade or something has to be coming soon to shake things up in Vancouver. The schedule is not going to do them any favors here. The next game is against Seattle, which could be a winnable game, but they're not, a team that you can just take for granted and go and win. It's probably one of the weaker teams that they're going to be playing here in the next little bit. Their schedule does not get any easier over the course of time here. It does get tougher, and we'll see what happens. But change in Vancouver has got to be coming, and it's got to be coming soon. Now, with the Maple Leafs, of course, one name that's being mentioned as well. If the Leafs want to make some changes or some, additions, there would be maybe a guy like Pierre Engvall. He hasn't had a great start to the season, found himself a healthy scratch. At the same time, he was injured and missed a lot of training camp, so that can certainly impact how a player is doing with their timing, and it really messes with you when you miss that much part of training camp. So I can't say for sure that an Engvall deal is going to take place, but I did see some reports today indicating that he's a name that the Leafs could be watching here to see maybe, if it might make sense. I mean, this is a guy who's traditionally been a pretty good bottom six player, but right now we're seeing guys like Engvall and Aston Reese and Obey Kubel have been, sitting out, and guys like Simmons and Clifford have been getting more of a chance to play. Of course, they lost last night in Vegas, so I do wonder if we'll see a new, different lineup as they continue their West Coast trip. They still have to play the California teams. I believe they're playing all three teams before they head back, so we'll see them against the Kings, the Ducks, and the Sharks. So, theoretically, the Leafs should be able to win a few of those games if they play like they're capable of. Austin Matthews only has one goal in the season, which is, I think, for some fans a little bit concerning, but we should remind you as well that this is not the first time he's had a bit of a slow start, and he tends to be very streaky at times, so I wouldn't worry about Matthews. I can still see him hitting 50, 60 goals, even though he's got one goal in 7 games, and it's not like he hasn't been doing anything. He does have, I think, like 4 or 5 assists. He's been productive and helped the team win some games, so really, at the end of the day here, that's not really something to be concerned about at all. But as we know, they have an abundance of players that can play that bottom six, fourth line kind of role. And right now, with the way the scratchers are going, you have to think that maybe a guy like Engvall could be a guy that gets moved. That might help with their cap situation. But at the same time, I'm not completely sold on that being a possibility either. I know at one point it looked like it was going to be Simmons to go. Now he's playing again. But, will that stick long term, or will they be going back to guys like Aston Reese or Obey Kubel? All these guys are on short-term deals as well, which makes it a little bit easier. Some of this is going to be impacted probably by the health of the blue line as well. We don't have Liljegren back with the Leafs just yet. That should be still a few weeks away. And, of course, the health of Jake Muzzin could influence things as well as he recovers and prepares for a comeback. Might be an impactful thing there, and how long he's going to be out to make them decide what to do next. But I would not be shocked with I wouldn't call it a bad start or a slow start by the Leafs, but it's certainly not a dominant start. And we know that the regular season doesn't mean everything. You have to get into the playoffs, and that's where it matters most. We've seen teams like, Tampa Bay Lightning are a prime example, who at one point were focused on being the first place team in the division all the time. And you know what? Eventually, I wouldn't say they stopped caring, but it became a little bit less of a focus than just getting in the playoffs. And, sometimes the pressure is not quite as much. They get through the season better and actually end up competing better as well. So we'll see what the Leafs do, but at this point, I would suspect to be some kind of a minor change in the next few weeks, depending on how things go. And this California trip could have a big impact on that. If they get some, if they can walk through California here and get 3 wins, we'll probably hold off doing any kind of moves, because why mess with something that's continuing to work and be successful? But if they have a rough road trip, then I think we might see at least a minor deal to maybe shake things up a bit. And the Minnesota Wild are another team to watch as well. They've gotten off to a slow start. They play Montreal tonight, so we'll see how that goes. That could be a winnable game, but Montreal's proven this year there's certainly no pushovers by any means, and they're going to give their opponents a tough time, and they've won some games, so, not a guaranteed victory by any means. In the way Minnesota's played, to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if Montreal were able to pick up 2 points tonight. But obviously we know, based on their tight salary cap situation with the big buyout penalties from Parise and Suter, that Matt Dumba reunion in Minnesota beyond the season is probably unlikely. I mean, that Minnesota blue line, to be honest, has not been good this year. As much as you look at it on paper and you see Spurgeon and Brodin and Dumba, Goligoski and others, they really, it's been, to me, a big part of the issue why they haven't had a successful start to their season. Obviously, they're missing Kevin Fiala, which I knew was going to impact their offense. Didn't think it would be, quite as much of an impact. But at the same time, if the slow start doesn't pick up, I would thought Matt Dumba, to me, could be a trade candidate. But at the same time, I can see if Minnesota gets themselves in a playoff spot, that they don't move him and they consider him like an own rental type of guy. But right now, Dumba is, a player that I can see being moved. If they're going to be out of it, if they don't pick things back up, then why not get a better return? Kalen Addison has also been pretty good for them this year to start the season as well, which is kind of, his emergence. It makes a veteran guy a little bit more, able to be moved out as well. So Matt Dumba, to me, makes a lot of sense, but I think a lot of this is going to depend on how the Wild season goes. If they can turn things around and get some wins under their belt in the next couple of weeks, they might hold off. We wouldn't probably rush into anything like that. But at the same time, if things go from bad to worse and they have a terrible start after 10, 15 games, maybe they kind of accelerate a move here to shake things up and try to save their season. So let me know your thoughts on what we discussed today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.